I once had a goldfish that I got from a carnival, small, round, and radiant. And being the simple creature I was at 5, I loved it. That night, after all the fun, I put it in a jar on my kitchen table. We would get a nice tank from PetSmart. We would have to get food and some sand, maybe plants for it to play. I imagined tomorrow. It was dead the next morning. Floating in a way no fish should, in this long, empty plastic vessel meant for pickling carrots. It wasn't until many years later that I learned fish need air to breathe. How could I have known that you need to put air into water if creatures were built with gills? And yet, if the earth were to cease turning, wouldn't we too be like fish, struggling to breathe without the things we need? If the trees were to stop growing, the wind no longer blowing, the sun with no shine, wouldn't we feel just the same? Helpless. I was in high school and at a big crossroads in my life, struggling with what to do with my future as I prepared for college. It was a push and pull with my parents between what I wanted and what they wanted. The confusion with where exactly I wanted to go with my life. Duty, filial responsibility, pressure, worth, instability, insecurity, loneliness. When had things become so awfully complicated? Ausschmerz. Noun. Weariness with the same old issues that you've always had, the same boring flaws and anxieties you've been gnawing on for years, which leaves them soggy and tasteless and inert, with nothing interesting left to think about, nothing left to do but spit them out and wander off to the backyard, ready to dig up some fresher pain you might have buried long ago. How many years, and yet while one passed on and one grew older, how are we still stuck in the same state, as if no passage of time had occurred at all, voiceless, helpless, childish? All of a sudden, I was 5 again, faced with another goldfish. The tragic thing about resentment is that it grows and it morphs. It settles like a fine powder over the surface of a relationship, and no matter how much you wipe away, there's always a grimy layer left behind. I resented my home life, I resented my situation, but perhaps most of all, I resented myself. Angry, bitter, confused, but most of all, I was tired. I was in a tank with no air. Was anyone listening? I learned that just as fish tear their fins to relieve the weight of water, there were things I too had to lose, things I chose to give up. Past burdens, long diminished feelings, old skins. Eventually, their fins heal with a bit of care and enrichment. Who knows if one day fins could give way to wings and a fish could learn to fly beyond the pickle jar. Where they would end up is still an open book with no true conclusion.